Welcome to the first installment of 2023,
It's John and Lauren's.
a Lifetime Christmas movie review. We just watched Single and Ready to Jingle, which states a woman finds unexpected romance when she mistakenly winds up in Alaska during Christmas time.
It was a very interesting movie. The lead person, Emma, is a vice president of some toy company who had the number 2 selling toy of the season. And
She hates Christmas because since she works in toys, no matter what, her goal is to make the next Christmas
bestseller or whatever.
bestseller lists, financials, and
All-
profit.
Yep, all about selling the toys.
So she came in second this year she makes K-pop Build-A-Bears, basically.
Yeah, it was the toy itself didn't really matter. She was just came in second to some wooden
build
construction thing. So
yeah,
it's like,
Buddy
okay.
builds it or something like that.
Yeah.
So she is ditching her parents, or her mother at least, for Christmas. And she lives in Chicago, and she told her assistant, because, you can't book your own flight, to book her to St. John in the Caribbean islands.
Yeah, she wanted to go on vacation somewhere warm where she could forget about Christmas altogether.
Forgot about Christmas altogether. Doesn't like it. So her assistant booked her a nonstop flight to St. John. And where did she end up?
She ended up in St. John, Alaska. Of course she did.
And I thought it was very odd. Chicago has a nonstop flight to St. John, Alaska, which turns out to be this really in the middle of nowhere place. They have one runway.
Mm-hmm.
They have, one plow guy who sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. And I just thought it was very odd that Chicago would have a nonstop flight to this.
Yeah, middle of nowhere,
middle of nowhere, Alaska. But anyways, so she gets on the flight and she is wearing a sundress, a little sun hat, and like wedge sandals.
Yeah, she is all ready to be in the beach, toasty warm, and she sits down next to a guy wearing all sorts of winter gear with a flannel hat and everything, and it's like, oh, okay. And then she gets off the plane and she's surprised at the snow and everything. And
wasn't it like -10 or something?
Yeah, it was like, yeah, in the negatives, and she's standing outside in her nothingness.
And of course, an attractive, same guy around her same age giggles, and she's like, why are you giggling at me? And he was like, you're wearing flip-flops. And she's like, these are designer. And so anyways, there's only one inn in town, and there's only one taxi, and she already missed it. So this guy picks up another couple who's been to St. John, Alaska for the past 37 Christmases, and they had their honeymoon there. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, oh, you should come with us because it's amazing. And so she does, because it's either that or get frostbite. And So they're rolling through town, which honestly wasn't even decorated, I didn't think.
But it was decorated, but not very. It was just your typical, here's some wreaths and
like a wreath. And she was like, hey, this is Whoville. How am I supposed to forget about Christmas here?
The main character, Emma, was a stick in the mud pretty much the entire movie, as you would expect from these movies. Like, the guy was very welcoming, Connor or whatever. Connor. He was very welcoming, trying to like rustle up the Christmas spirit in her. The people in the car were singing Christmas carols, and she turned off the radio.
Yeah, it was so awkward.
She's just this total stick in the mud through the whole thing, trying to book a flight to get out of here, and they're in the middle of a snowstorm, and the plows broke, so all this little town stuff happening.
Airport shuts down.
So she goes to the inn, which is owned by
Connor's sister
Connor's
and her
sister.
wife. And honestly, they were the most likable. Well, the sister was the most likable and normal character in the entire
Hmm.
show. I would be friends with her. But of course they own the only inn in town and they have it Christmas 24/7 and they put her
Yep.
in the candy cane suite and everything's candy cane. Although it was very cheaply decorated, like while everything was red and white, it just they could have done a lot better. But
Yeah.
tell about how we think she's not human because what did she do with the candy cane?
Oh yeah, there was like that. She's talking to her assistant, trying to get her to buy the or to get plane tickets out of there as fast as possible, and she's like, and she hangs up on the phone with her, and then just straight up grabs a candy cane and just takes a huge bite out of it,
Like
like a monster. Like
crunch?
who in their right mind, like Jaws over here, just straight up chomping a candy cane, one bite, freshly grabbed out of the thing, and
It
like,
was awkward.
what in the hell is happening here? She's just over here like it's a piece of
Carrot.
carrot, and they just kept going, and it was awkward. The beginning of the movie was super awkward because she's stuck in it the paint by numbers thing. She's stuck in a town she doesn't want to be in, surrounded by Christmas, and I'm a stick in the mud, and blah blah.
You know,
And the
a
guy's
hot
trying
shot
to,
corporate girl, which kind of reminded us of, you know, in the proposal, Sandra Bullock, you know, hot shot corporate has to go to Alaska and is very like, oh, I wear high
Mhm.
heels, you know, blah blah blah. This girl looked a little bit like Anne Hathaway, maybe a little bit with Jackie O thrown in the jawline at least. She was pretty, of course.
Mhm.
And the thing that annoys me in all of these movies, and I'm gonna say it with this one too, because I already told you, I don't like how, you know, you can be a total bitch and, you know, the hot guy in town will go for you and put up with all your nonsense just because you are a hot girl.
Mhm.
Because if she were not, he would not be into it at all.
Yeah, so they could make it through a couple of date environment things, and it seems very obvious that the sisters are trying to hook him up with her.
Mm-hmm.
She's slowly opening up to the idea because she had to get clothes. I mean, so their first dates were like he took her to a clothing store so that she could get clothing appropriate for
Snow.
sub-zero temperatures.
Oh, and speaking of that, another thing that annoyed me in this movie is that so they're saying how it's negative, negative, and there's wind chill, and this is Alaska, and
Hmm.
it's so much worse than Chicago in winter, and blah, blah, blah. They go outside every time with unzipped coats. Like their coats are just open, and they're like, it's so cold, I'm getting frostbite. Zip your coat! Zip your coat!
Yeah. So they do a lot of that stuff. There's this awkward moment where it becomes very obvious what the plot line is, where they're talking about stuff, and she mentions that she's some hot shot
Toy
toy
maker.
maker, and everybody just kind of smirks and
And
looks at
looks at Connor.
Connor, and it's like, oh, okay, so obviously he's the guy that makes the number one toy.
Yeah,
That
you called it.
And they kind of play around that for a little while. Connor takes her out on some more dates and talks about like what makes her like Christmas, because sounds like it's not, she doesn't hate Christmas. She just doesn't hate the way that everything at work revolves around Christmas, and it's commercialized and not actual Christmas stuff. So they do like a bunch of dates to get to the bottom of what does she like about Christmas and what does he like about Christmas, and going to, they're going out on dates and playing in the snow, having snowball fights, and
He takes her to
he
the
takes
community
her.
center where he volunteers. I don't know if those kids were like homeless or like
It's I don't
possibly
know.
homeless children
Not
running
homeless
about or
children.
just unfortunate, but they're their community center was very like modern and like very brand
Yeah.
new looking. But of Key and
They
she,
touch
of
on,
course, are very like the children, and she was like laughing like maniacally, like with the children. And I don't know, I just don't get how people can just be like so into like random kids they just met and just touchy feely. Did you notice she was like rubbing that girl's back?
I didn't notice that, but
It was weird.
yeah. So they're talking about that stuff, and he mentions that he's had no problem finding a bunch of jobs. He's the mayor of the town.
He's the mayor.
He drives people around. He takes care of his neighbors and does all the, normal,
Chops firewood.
yeah, chops firewood, takes care of the sisters at the
We
inn.
find out later that he helped them purchase the inn. He like plows Mrs. MacGyver's driveway, and
Yeah.
but he just doesn't find fulfillment in
Yeah,
his job or
and she was
something.
talking about how she loves her job and her company, and it's all big family, and they're all happy and everything. She just doesn't like the Christmas stuff. She doesn't like how as soon as Christmas ends, they're planning for the next Christmas and blah blah blah. And he's like, "Oh, well, in my corporate experience, I've had the exact opposite." And so they continue on. They have a couple more dates. He takes her back to his house and wants to show her his toy
Workshop.
workshop. And that's like the obvious moment where it's like, okay, he's going to tell her that he is the guy that writes or that creates these toys. But he doesn't, because she gets a call and she's like, oh, I'm excited to leave. The main thread of this is that neither of these two characters can admit that they like each other at all throughout the whole movie, and that every time one of them gets close to admitting it, it's usually the guy, he gets close to letting her in and telling her a secret, and then something comes up with regards to her leaving.
Her
Like her
assistant
assistant calls and says, oh, I found they're opening the thing, or I found you a
airport.
flight.
Yeah,
And then he clams up again.
because he's being a little whatever. And so, anyways, so every day she's like, I'm leaving today. I'm leaving today. No, she doesn't. And then it's like winter solstice or something. What was it? Northern Light
Yeah, Northern Light Festival
Festival
or something.
in the inn, but she was like over at the guy's house, and of course there's like this snowstorm, and little Miss I don't zip my jacket was like, I'm going to walk the 3 miles to the inn because we made cookies and they can't have a party without cookies.
Well, that's the culmination of everything. They're making cookies at his house, and she goes into his workshop and learns that he makes toys.
Build a rocket.
And then she finds out that Cooper is his middle name, and that he is actually Fletcher Morgan or whatever.
Dun dun dun.
The creator of the #1 best-selling toy of the year. And she gets ultra salty and like instantly starts a fight about the guy because she wasn't able to beat his sales and everything. And he was like, yeah, everything you said was true. That's why I quit my company, or I quit the company that I worked for, because I didn't like that it was all profit driven and no blah blah, and I liked working for the kids, and so now I work here at home with the kids. And they get into a fight, and she pouts and storms off and says she's going to walk to the inn, and then they actually walk to the inn, in a huff, arguing most of the way.
When they finally get there, there's like all the people of the inn, and it's very odd because after the first car ride with like there was no other people ever at the inn, but now there's all these little
Yeah, they
whatever.
had the couple that they had were like supposed to be from like Wisconsin or something, and they had like over the top accents. And so it was weird for that car ride, and then they just disappeared for the rest of the movie until this scene when they appeared again with other guests that we had never seen at all throughout the whole thing. But basically, this festival, they kind of set the stage and acknowledge that they both like each other, but she's leaving. So he storms off after they basically sit down and talk about everything and talk about how they like everything, but she's like, but it's cold up here.
Mm-hmm.
And then and says that she's leaving, and then the guy comes or storms off, and the sister comes in and talks to her and like says, what are you guys, basically says, what are you guys doing, you idiots? You both like each other. It's very apparent. Why don't you guys just do something about it? And so she's like, I don't know, it's too cold up
That was her
here.
reasoning.
So the next morning she checks out and goes off to leave,
And then she just goes, and the sisters are pouting because, you know, this is like his only chance that he's actually liked someone. And do something for yourself, Connor. You always do everything for everyone else. Oh, that's why he was pissed too, because he plays Santa, and so he was going to
oh
go
yeah,
to give toys to the kids or whatever, underfunded because they just don't have the money, even though it's a brand new, like very modern.
well, the center doesn't matter. It's not that. It's the kids are the ones that are.
Well, anyway. And by the way, he was like, "Oh, it's underfunded, bro." He is the major.
He's the mayor.
Yeah. Well,
But
he's the
he
mayor,
can't.
but he was a toy factory man,
Yeah,
so he's rich. He paid for the
not
sisters.
necessarily.
He paid for the sisters, and he had a really nice house himself.
But
Anyways,
yeah,
so he was upset because she wasn't staying for it. Which, okay, if you're having fun there, why would you go to the Caribbean by yourself for like 2 days? Do you know how long
Yeah.
the plane is gonna be from who knows where, Alaska, to St. John?
yeah, I don't get it. It's like, all right, you've already spent 3/4 of your vacation here. Just ride it out and enjoy the vacation.
Ride it out.
So
She leaves.
She leaves, and the sisters convince Connor to go chase her.
And so he
So
does.
he does.
So anyway, so he misses her on the plane. The plane already departed. And so he goes to be Santa to the children. And the sisters randomly show up and are like, "Oh, K-pop bear has been donated for all the children." And he was like, "What? How?" And they said,
Yeah, they said, we talked to this nice lady over at
Tinsel
Toys or whatever, and there was a person who agreed to donate part of their Christmas bonus to fund the gathering of toys.
And then in pops girl, and she's like, "Ho, ho, ho, I didn't take that plane. I wanted to see you with the children."
Yeah.
And then they go outside, and there's a horse-drawn carriage, but the person who...
Yeah, it looked like there was a mannequin.
It was a mannequin at the
front of the horse-drawn
real
carriage.
horses. Or the guy was dead. We don't know yet. But then they kissed, and the little bells that only ring for people who are going to be together forever.
Yeah, there was a thing that they had mentioned about that, and she also offered him a job to work with her at the toy company.
So he's like, "Oh, are you going to go back to Chicago?" And she's like, "Yep, but you're coming with me." And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I got you a job as vice president." Side note, what's his job in Alaska?
He's a mayor of the town, so that's going to be a weird thing. And he agreed, yeah.
He agreed.
So it was a weird thing. It wasn't actually terrible.
I kind of liked it.
It was kind of fun, but my biggest complaint is that the girl was like just the worst. She was just the worst throughout the first 3/4 of the movie. It was just
she was a hottie, so
yeah, she was just like a total bitch throughout the whole beginning and middle.
Oh, he also got her a bracelet on her way, and maybe that's why she didn't get on the plane. He got her a little gold bracelet that said like, "May Christmas always be in your heart," or something like that.
Yeah.
Which turned her mind around, because at first she was like, "No, I hate Christmas." And then she was like, "Oh, that's so perfect."
Yep.
So
how would you rate it? What would you rate it?
All right, I'm going to give it, you're going to think this is all, I'm going to give it a 7.
I'm kind of surprised by that, but not really. You enjoyed it. I'd say it's like a It wasn't terrible, so I'd say it's a solid 5. It was firmly average. If the person was a little more likable, it would have been better.
I like Alaska too, so that was intriguing. But yeah, so Jingle with the side of single.
No, single and ready to jingle.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah.
You should watch it. It's
Yeah,
not
check
bad.
it out. How'd you like it? Let us know.
Let us know.
We'll see you next time.